with a road exiting onto a state highway, it would be helpful to know that that's acceptable to DOT, particularly if it's a brand new opening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would bring the Army Corps of Engineers involved into this?
Oh, sorry. You know, certain work in you know, natural sensitive areas. You could get, you know, if you're doing work inside a stream of some sort, that's a, you know, you could use Army Corps. You could require Army Corps permit. You know, if you're doing culvert work in streams and whatnot.
Some wetlands too.
Wetlands, yeah, yep.
So what you're saying, Nick, is basically it's outside of shoreline zoning.
I beg your pardon?
It's when you're outside of shoreline zoning, you know, you're outside of the 250 feet, you know, shoreline zoning ordinance. You got this other ordinance where the Corps of Engineer has authority over, basically, you know, wetlands and streams and all that.
Yeah, there are situations where where you could potentially require an Army Corps permit, and I just think, you know, it would be advantageous to list that just so the applicant knows.
Yeah, and that rule is what do they call that at the state level? What chapter is that?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head.
What is that, George? You know,
I don't know either. I know there's those Army Corps of Engineering permits have been required forever, and there's a fair amount of overlap with, or some overlap with the applicability to the Maine Natural Resources Protection Act. In some instances, particularly with regard to wetlands. So that's why, for example, CMP's corridor needed to get both.
Yeah, so a lot of these large subdivisions are going to probably get into that situation where they got some wetlands, small amount of wetlands, and big wetlands, et cetera, and especially the small ones. So I guess.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Sorry, I just looked it up. It's Section 404 of the Clean Water Act.
404.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
You got it. So good to include those.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, moving right along. In 8.2 submissions, for some reason this goes, plans for subdivisions containing more than 75 acres may be drawn at scale, but in the preliminary, it had 100 acres. So I just kind of recommend moving that to 100 acres just to stay in line with the preliminary plan. Or conversely, I suppose we could always change the preliminary plan to 100 feet. I'm sorry, 75 acres.
Consistency would be nice, I think. Do we lose anything by saying having the 100-acre one? Quite frankly, we don't have a lot of subdivision ordinance, things that trigger the subdivision ordinance. We don't have a lot of those, you know, applications. Not minimizing it, but just
right.
I'm just thinking in the future we may, though. I think we may want to consider bringing it down to 75 acres. Let's keep rather, you know, have the consistency of 75 acres rather than 100 acres. Because going forward, you know, we're going to probably start seeing them.
Okay, Pete, with that, that's fine with me. You know, Craig or George, do you have any other feelings on that?
Yeah, I'm struggling to catch up because I'm trying to figure out where in 8.2 the map scale is.
Oh, sorry. So 8.2 submissions, it starts on the third line down. It says plans for subdivisions more than 75 acres may be drawn at a scale of not more than 200 feet to the inch. In the preliminary, that is set at 100 acres.
And we're just talking about a scale for the plans.
It's either, yeah, I'm just saying that there should be consistency, whether that's 100 acres or 75 acres is up
I'm
to
fine
the
with 100.
Yeah, I'm fine with 100 as well.
And so, and I'm fine either way, just being consistent is fine. Pete was saying, if we get more applications in the future by having a finer or lower criteria, that might be helpful. So I don't know.
I think just of note, it then goes on to say the plan shall be no larger than 24 by 36 inches in size. So I think typically you're gonna, with that, you're kind of pigeonholing yourself. 100 acres at 200 feet to the inch will fit pretty well on that 24 by 36. So that's kind of, I think, why traditionally they settle at that 100 acre size,
Right.
just as a frame of reference.
Yeah. It's pretty much just a practical matter.
Right.
Then let's stay with 100 then.
Okay, sounds good to me now. Now it's, we talked about it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And then still in 8.2, down towards the bottom on the same page, it says, in addition, one copy of the final plan reduced to a size of 8.5 by 11 inches and all accompanying information shall be mailed to each board member no less than 7 days prior to the meeting. So this, I guess, is a little, I don't really understand if it's saying that the town's going to do that, if the applicant's going to do that. And furthermore, I don't think it should be an applicant's responsibility. So if we think that this is even necessary, I think it would be worth our while to put in that this is the responsibility of the town.
I would just note for historical reference that when this basic version of the subdivision was written in 1988, there were almost no staff in the town office, no code enforcement officer, no staff to the planning board. And that's all changed. So, and everything else is handled by submission, shoreline zoning, commercial development review. Maybe the numbers of copies are required, but they're submitted to the town office and then the town office forwards them to us. So I'm good with that change.
I would be good with that change. And to be very clear, I think that it's muddy to have that in the submission requirements, which points to the applicant doing it. The task has really fallen sort of de facto.
Now they'll be able to hear you.
Not if you mute it. You gotta unmute it, don't you?
Can you hear us, guys?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, there you go. I know it's
It's backwards. You have to mute it?
well, it'll pop up saying here.
So,
White, not red.
There you go.
yeah, I agree with you guys. We just need to follow our basic procedure. And from our standpoint, I don't even know that you need to have any sort of timeline on it. Hold on a second. There we go. I don't know that we need any sort of timeline on it. We just need to, or the applicant needs to know that you can't submit it, less than 7 days prior to a meeting and expect it to be heard by the board.
Yeah, that is helpful to have in the ordinance, if for no other reason to help the staff in the town office discipline some of the applicants who come in at the last minute expecting immediately being placed on the planning board agenda.
And I would assume that someone who's developing a project of this size would be a little bit more sophisticated in that regard. Maybe not, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope. One would hope.
But we have to plan.
Correct. All right. So, let's see.
Are you even going to be able to read an 8.5 by 11-inch shrunk down plan?
Right, 100 acre plan shrunk down to 8.5 by 11. What do you really see there?
Right.
So, yeah. So I'll work on some language in there that brings it up to speed with 2020 and the timeline for submission to the town. If that works for everyone.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
All right. Moving on. 8.2 8.2E1. I was just thinking towards the, it's talking about the indication of type of water supply system. At the bottom of E1, it says wells shall be protected by a 300-foot radius natural buffer zone. I just think that would probably be better in standards, in the general standards. At the very least, I guess we could add it to, just make sure that it's in standards as well. But it just seems a little out of place there, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I agree. We just really need an indication of whether they're going to develop a common public drinking water supply for the entire subdivision. And plus the state wellhead protection plans have changed a lot since 300 feet.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, we're not going to get to general standards tonight or phosphorus. There's a couple of things that we aren't going to get to tonight, but yeah, certainly water quality, and that will be discussed at a later date. So,
yep.
But just this in general, I don't think it serves a place in this particular section. I don't know if everyone agrees with that or not, though.
I would say move to standard.
I'm fine with moving it.
Yeah, sure, let's move it. Okay.
Sounds good. This I just down below in F, it reads the date the plan was prepared, magnetic and true north point, graphic map scale. I'm just suggesting that we then create a new section that then says names and addresses of the record owner, subdivider, an individual or company who prepared the plan. Just because I think it as you read it, those two groups aren't necessarily, those are two distinct groups, and I just think it should be handled that way.
It's fine with me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Agreed.
Okay. 8.2I, I would just say, so towards the end, you know, these lines, I just think most of this work, it would be good if we had it written in that this work is to be done by a certified land surveyor or engineer. You know, that would be, you know, my recommendation, just so we don't have some random person out there saying that, you know, this is a straight line and this is how long it is.
That's quite
I agree.
you know, it's required by state professional licensing requirements anyway.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay. Nitpicky, but I couldn't find an official map for the town of Belgrade. Does anyone know if you have one? That would be separate from official maps, or, you know, pretty much long gone. I don't know. Does Belgrade have one? I couldn't locate one. Anyone that's familiar with the archives in the town office or something, I don't know.
Oh. I don't know that we have one.
I have no idea. Official map obviously means something in legal terms or other terms. Is that like a map that's been adopted by town meeting to say these are the roads of Belgrade or something?
So I'm going to try to pull it up, but it's not, yeah. So I actually hadn't really come across official maps until I read this, and then I located what exactly an official map was. But basically, yeah, I think I don't have that in front of me, but it is something of that sort, George, where, you know, it was the official map plotted out from back in the day that, you know, you kind of had of the town. And I just don't think they've been kept in use, you know, as we've advanced. I've yet to ever see one hanging in a town office. Yeah, I mean, there might be some at the Osher Library or something at USM in the map library or something. I don't know, but.
I'm curious if the terminology that we used in J, paragraph J, when we said on the official map, if that was maybe rather than having it capitalize that, maybe a change could be the map used in the comprehensive plan, which may have been what they were intending to say at that time. Does that make sense?
So you're saying they potentially were saying upon the official map of the comprehensive plan?
I think so, because I think at the time,
Sure.
when we did this last, I think the assumption was, oh, the map that we use when we're doing the comprehensive plan work was this thing, you know, and because that's where we kind of went back and forth to. You said, oh, when we're talking about this topic, and we turned to the map we were using, and said, how will this play out? So I don't know, George.
I was just going to say that might be a good link or reminder that we're going to have to make a finding, aren't we, that a subdivision is consistent with the comprehensive plan? Isn't that in 38, Title 30A? Or am I wrong?
Say that again. What exactly are you saying?
Well, I was just saying, if we need to make a finding that the subdivision is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which I thought was the case in my vague recollection from Title 30A in statute, that this rewriting it in the manner that Peter was suggesting would provide sort of a means or a reminder to the board to consider where it is on the map associated with the comprehensive plan.
I see what you're saying. That makes sense. Yeah.
Do I have that right, Nick? That
So I mean, yes and no. You know, so comprehensive plans are guidance documents. So, you know, and they're supposed to reflect the vision and ideals and opinions of the community. But that being said, they aren't legally binding. In theory, and less often in practice, the ordinances and that you develop should reflect the visions of the town as expressed in the comprehensive plan. A lot of times when we talk about land use and the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan really backs up municipality's ability to enact zoning. And so that's really what I think kind of what you're getting at, if I'm hearing you correctly. And we kind of talked last time, or maybe maybe it was just with Anthony in passing, but it's kind of a funky situation in Belgrade where you do have this map. You don't technically have a zoning ordinance, but you kind of do, because there is some language scattered throughout your commercial ordinance that talks about zones created in the comprehensive plan. And since the commercial ordinance was enacted by the town, you kind of have de facto zoning. But so long story short, I don't think it hurts to talk about to reference the map and the comprehensive plan. At the end of the day, does it have any legal jurisdiction? No. If that makes sense. Was that?
I mean, if the burden's on us to make sure this ordinance is consistent with the comprehensive plan, then this paragraph has very little meaning.
Yeah, right. It's to me it's redundant and unnecessary, in my personal opinion. I think maybe back in the 80s when this was developed, there was an official map of the town, and you would have, someone would lay out this proposed subdivision, and then you would be able to see how that would look and coincide with the current development of the town. And it would give you an ability to kind of, project and see what it looks like. But it, I just don't think that's happening anymore.
So do we strike that paragraph J then?
I think so.
Let's do that then.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Craig?
Yes.
All right. All right, moving on. And then this was just something that I found in a model. Was here would also be potentially an appropriate time to have the applicant in this section, have the applicant designate the location of clearing, land clearing, and storage, and then also method of disposal. If
And you, by disposal, you mean like stumps and
Right.
that type? Whether they're going to dispose of it on site or take it off.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
I'm good with that.
Nick, I have a general question for you. I think I know the answer to this, but one of my pet peeves is how most subdivisions in Belgrade as well as in central Maine are usually developed by virtue of first log the hell out of the property and then subdivide it. And by the time it comes to the planning board, the deer yard might be gone, the you know, et cetera. A lot of the damage has been done. Is there any way to prevent that other than that provision in statute that you can't subdivide a clear-cut lot within 5 years?
Right. I mean, that's why that's in place. You know, I haven't come across any examples of communities doing anything above that. But I can certainly look into that, George.
Yeah, I've had this discussion with the regional biologists, and they don't really have any ideas. It's a matter of considerable, from Inland Fish and Wildlife, I should say, frustration for them because a lot of deer yards are wiped out that way.
Absolutely. I'll look into that, and we can continue that next time for sure. But off the top of my head, I can't think of any examples of other communities, other ordinances where they've done anything.
And there may not be any real practical way to prevent that isn't
right.
Draconian.
Right. Okay, moving along, unless anyone has anything else. So 8.3, just getting into semantics here, just need to update 8.3b to say 30A 4404. Oh, and in 8.3c at the bottom, it says, if the superintendent of schools indicates there is less than 20% excess classroom capacity existing in the schools, which will serve the subdivision, considering previously approved but not built subdivision, the board shall require the plan be divided into sections to prevent classroom overcrowding. Don't really see this anymore. Has this ever come up? Are the enrollment figures in Belgrade such that that this would be an issue? You know, most schools in Maine are seeing declining enrollments. You know, I'm just curious what the local opinion is on this language.
Well, again, in 1988, it was an issue, and because of all the subdivisions, not only in Belgrade but Sydney and Oakland, and you know, portable classrooms were, you know, everywhere. The clearly enrollments are declining, except in Sydney. Because that town's just growing, the population is growing quite fast. I mean, you know, it's sort of a two-edged sword. Do we have something that deals with this issue? Whether this is the right language or not, I don't know. But for the future, when, you know, things could change, maybe that is so far out in the future we shouldn't worry about it. But you know, whether some major development happens in Belgrade that all of a sudden, you know, results in a lot of residential growth in town beyond what we're seeing now. Who knows? You know, it's like the brand new hospital in Augusta all of a sudden spurring all kinds of sprawl development in that part of Augusta. sometimes you can't predict these things. I mean, certainly in terms of the economics or the impact of a subdivision on the fiscal health of a town and its tax base, it really relates a lot to how many school kids you're going to have in that subdivision.
Does anyone else have any comments? So
I was not on the planning board at the time when George was, when he was talking about that. So that's good historical context. Otherwise, I'm kind of on the fence about, removing that particular sentence. But if there's reason to keep it in case of something in the future, I don't think it hurts to keep it.
So, but that's just another process for the developer to go through. What, do they have to contact the superintendent, or do they put out how's that work?
Right.
It sounds outdated to me.
Yeah, and I guess, I struggle with this. I struggle with the talk of there has become sort of, and understandably so, there's been talk about whether or not school districts are worth it, whether we should be consolidating more. Often we talk about the costs to educate and what those do to the tax base. But me personally, and this is I'm just strictly personal. I believe that you can't have a strong and vibrant community if you don't have kids populating the schools. So this doesn't. I mean, just because you're building a subdivision, as we've seen in Maine, it doesn't necessarily mean that school-age children are going to be residents in that subdivision. But B, it also kind of is language that if I were to, it kind of disincentivizes building and places, in my opinion, the wrong emphasis on what the town should be looking at attracting. That's just me personally, though. I'm not sure if anyone has. I guess I just think it's a little out of place. That's all. I think it's a good problem if you have a community that is attracting students that needs to and potentially down the line needs to expand its school department.
So let me air this out. If I wanted to build a subdivision, but the intent of that subdivision is to have it populated by senior citizens or retirees, not one of those people, the assumption would be, not one of them would have school-age children. So if we left this in that case, if that criteria were met, the applicant would have to do something which wouldn't even be realistic in that case, right?
Correct.
So trying to hear also and understand George's concern, because he has a historical context in Belgrade. Is there a way to handle his concern in another part of the ordinance? Maybe if that sentence weren't there, but you still wanted to make sure you had a way to, if the criteria were met somewhere, to address it.
Right.
Just trying to toss out some ideas.
Sure. I can look. I'll try to see if there are any particular ways. This is the first. This was the first time I've seen any language like this in a subdivision ordinance. But I'll look at some of the communities that are experiencing, net growth in the school districts and see if there are any ways that they're handling that through land use ordinances.
Sure, like Wyndham or something.
Yeah, Wyndham. I mean, my partner teaches in Yarmouth, and they're rebuilding all their school, because there's a thing called school shopping now, where families from away come and shop around for different school districts, and then just decide, yeah, we'll settle here, and boom. So, yeah, I'll look at some other communities that are experiencing growth in the schools.
I never heard it given a name in terms of school shopping, but frankly, that happens here too. And did when our sons were young. Work usually with people moving into our district to take advantage of what was considered a good educational system, and some moving out to the Maranacook district thinking that was better. A better school system. So, some of it's taste and preferences, but question though about this issue in general, do we even have authority to take into account the fiscal impact of a subdivision in our decision making? Because if not, then what's it matter to ask the superintendent what, can they accommodate the kids from this subdivision?
Right. I think I mean, I feel like my gut instinct is to say that it's overreaching, but I would have to look to verify that.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit more investigation into that, Nick, would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I will do that. I guess. Oh, it's 6:30. I don't know. Okay. 8.3G. So all I was saying is that I think this could be better suited in the enforcement section. So standard conditions of approval, no lot may be re-subdivided. This, to me, would fit better in enforcement.
My inclination is to disagree since it's
Okay.
part of the approval process. But I'd be interested in hearing why you think it's more appropriate in an enforcement section.
Because to me, this language actually happens after the approval, so no lot may be re-subdivided without prior board approval. So you're talking about some right there in one that would come after approval. Natural vegetative buffer and filter strips as shown on the final plan shall not be altered except for the cutting of dead trees. So again, that would be after approval. Prior to the sale or transfer of the title of a subdivision approved under this ordinance, the prospective buyer must obtain board approval. So again, that's after approval. That was why. I guess the language, G, the title of G, standard conditions of approval, is, in my opinion, not the right language, and therefore it would go in the. These are to me are all post-approval conditions.
I guess I was thinking of this in terms of the way we approve developments under the Commercial Development Review Ordinance and the way Maine DEP review, approves things under the site law, for example, where you'll have standard conditions of approval that apply to all approvals, and then you'll have project-specific conditions of approval that go on to the findings of fact or the order documenting the basis of the decision. So you have two sets of approval, the standard conditions that apply all the time, and to me, that seems part of the approval process rather than the enforcement process. But I mean, clearly, if somebody didn't comply with it, that would be an enforcement matter. But it would also seem to me that we would want to have this in a place where the applicant would see it. In addition to when they're going through their approval process, so they know what is, the expectations are, in part. And I would assume we would want to have this on whatever approval documentation we have. I can't even think off the top of my head if we have to do findings of fact in order for a subdivision or something comparable. We would have those standard conditions listed there again, so that the developer has that in their hands to consult going forward.
I agree with what you're saying. And now that I'm thinking about it more, would it make sense then to have, so we can leave Article 7 as is. So it's titled Article 7, Final Plan for Major Subdivision. Why does that say? I guess this should be Article 8, but for some reason it says VII on mine. Anyway, so Article 8, Final Plan for Major Subdivision. You would have 8.1 procedure and then 8.2 submissions. Then what if we were to create a separate article to have our own article for final approval, and then we would have a subsection of final approval of filing, and then we could pull out standard conditions of approval to make it a little bit more apparent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. That would work.
Or just,
That would
I guess,
work.
just make it Article 9, final approval and filing, just so it kind of pulls it away from the submission section.
Yeah.
That could work.
At least for the time being, we see if we don't like it as we're going through and editing then we can, yeah, okay. Okay, how are we looking? Keep going?
Yes.
Okay. Getting back to current time and whatnot, I was wondering if we want to add an article for revisions to approved plans or no?
So Nick, that would handle just the fact that if someone wanted to come in for a revision.
Yeah, so say someone had, been granted approval for an 8-lot subdivision, and then, for whatever reason, they want to make that now a 10-lot subdivision. We could set up a process in which they could come in, and have those additional 2 lots, reviewed, so that they wouldn't have to go through. I'm sorry. Let's say an additional 3 lots. So they want to go from 8 to 11. We could have a streamline. We could have an article that would address and spell out how the process that would be involved in making revision to an already approved plan.
That makes sense to me. All we've seen in my tenure on the board have been revisions. One fairly minor. I think I'll correct myself earlier. We've had at least 3, maybe 4, and to have them go through the entire process doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And in fact, that's what we've done. We haven't required them to go through the entire process.
Sure. This way we could just have it laid out, though. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yes.
Sounds like a good plan to me. But change orders.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for the thumbs up, Peter.
You bet.
Okay, Article 9, enforcement. I just 9.1A, I thought we could potentially add some language in there that would allow for funding to cover the cost of inspection. Oftentimes you'll see 2-3% of the estimated cost of the project.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
So Nick, if the project was estimated to cost $10,000, it'd be $200-300 set aside for
Inspection.
inspection.
Yeah.
Geez, I wonder if Anthony would like that idea. If that would be good for that particular line item for the CEO.
So, you know, someone's going to make some money on this. Why shouldn't the town see a little of that action?
Yeah.
Well, I guess, I mean, are you really, I don't know if you'd be making money, right? Someone's got
No, it would definitely not be
right.
a money-making.
No, it's, you know, to offset the costs associated with the inspection of the work being done. But
So is an inspection of a subdivision more onerous on a CEO than just normal run-of-the-mill inspection? Is it more intensive?
I suppose it can be. And this way it just kind of, you know, this way it would just give you a little flexibility. You know, it's kind of the same thing we're seeing. Well, I guess this is a terrible example because it's a loaded gun, but you know, we're talking about marijuana and, you know, the local municipal.
Whoa.
Well, yeah, you know, it's just, so that's really, you know, you can charge for permitting, the cost associated, you know, and it's just an associated cost that, you know, the development of a subdivision can, you know, accrue as opposed to just normal.
It would be, you know, if it's $100,000 development, and you're talking $2,000 or $3,000 extra dollars.
Are you saying that's steep?
I mean, everybody that's going to be in there is going to be paying taxes.
That's true.
Anthony, a question for you. I mean, given that Gary's basically a half-time employee, the code enforcement officer is basically a half-time employee, does he even have the time to, if we got a major subdivision, to do this type of inspection? Or could make the time?
Gary, are you tuned in? You want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh,
Yep.
Sorry, Gary, I didn't realize you were there. I would have asked you.
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge deal to go out and inspect subdivisions. I don't think it's any worse than any other project. I mean, probably the biggest thing to inspect in a subdivision is the road, and that would be done by the road commissioner, not myself.
So the only thing I would say is that there could be language, you know, that would provide for this, any unused funds to be returned. You know, so it's basically, it could be, you know, you could set up an account with funds, and if those funds aren't used, then the funds would be returned. It would basically just be a way to safeguard Belgrade in the case that the inspection is cumbersome for whatever reason. Something to consider.
my inclination would be that this might be something where we sort of base this on the potential that we only have it applied to a really large subdivision, one that would be somewhat like possibly could be a real burden on Gary and the town versus, you know, a 10-lot subdivision or something of that nature. I don't know what that right cutoff is, but
I don't either.
We can spitball. We can talk about that later
Okay.
after some time for consideration.
Yep.
But that I could see that George being a good way to approach it.
Nick, I just had a question. Where'd you come up with this particular concept? Is it being used by other towns here in Maine, or is?
Yeah, and that is kind of carryover from model ordinances. You see it float around from quite often.
Okay, and I'm just thinking where the concept of putting some good faith money in an escrow account, you have it up front, and then if it's not utilized, it's given back so many days later or something like that, or sort of.
Correct.
You know, that, and I can see that makes sense. It's like a contingency fund. If it's not utilized, it goes back. So I can see the reasoning behind it. So it's a good discussion point to bring up later. Sure, let's talk about that later.
Okay. Um, 9.1B, just adding assure compliance with approved plans to the last line. So it would read, municipal officers shall take any steps necessary to assure compliance with the approved plans and to preserve the municipality's rights.
makes sense.
And then I was thinking potentially moving 9.2D below G. 9.2G. And why did I initially say that? Just because it kind of talks about the close of construction.
Oh, so it's better fit at the end.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm looking at the wrong. I was looking at 9.1 D and G, not 9.2 D and G. Okay, so 9.2 D, any person, firm, corporation, or other legal entity who conveys any land which has not been approved as required by these regulations shall be punished. So that, I think, is kind of, I just thought that would be more appropriate at the end. Talking about financial punishment, you know, for something that's been done. I just thought it ties in better at the end.
Yep, that's fine with me.
I'm okay with that. Hey, I want to bring, we are tantalizingly close to the end of the suggestions that Nick has brought up, but we do have some other things to deal with tonight on our agenda. And I know we've gone a little over an hour here. We have our moratorium discussion for tonight, so.
Yeah, we have a shoreline zoning permit too.
And one permit.
Yeah.
So I don't want to cut anybody off, but is that okay that we draw this discussion to a close?
Just one quick question, Peter, before we move on to the next agenda item. Nick, penalties that are specified in the current ordinance, are Are those, are penalties specified in statute, like minimum penalty specified in statute?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that these are, believe it or not, are current, but I will double check that.
Okay, because would seem to me
I know you would think that they would increase, right, if this was built in '88.
Right.
But let me verify.
state law, there's no such thing as, increase in value over time.
Yeah. So, but yeah, absolutely.
So Nick, are we okay to air knowing we have articles 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 to still discuss?
Yep. It works with me.
Thanks. So planning board members, are we okay to move on to the next couple of items?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And perfect. And Nick, obviously, if you would like to
It's got to be something better on TV.
yeah,
Oh gosh, no, I'll stick around.
okay. You may want to watch the sausage making as we
Is that what? Hey, I'll take it.
Us in the legislature.
Yeah. My last name's Ashauer. I like sausage.
All right. So Anthony, do you want to help us out on this?
Yeah, so at your last meeting, there was discussion about the potential of having a moratorium on commercial solar array applications. And you guys asked if I would take the select board's temperature on that. And that is something that they're interested in considering putting to the voters. The one thing that and I emailed you guys about this earlier today, a couple of different things that they wanted you guys to consider as part of a moratorium. And one would be a moratorium on wind turbines, commercial wind turbines, and also on telecommunication towers. Now, what I don't think that they realized is you've already got sections of your commercial development review ordinance that address those sorts of developments. So I'm not certain that that's actually something that's necessary. But if you guys think it is, then it's something you should discuss. Also today, we had a first strategic meeting of a select board appointed group that's going to be dealing with the salt well contamination issue down in the depot with our friends from DOT. And there is one property owner there who has talked about potentially subdividing his property to have some rental properties there. And that's of concern because that could end up having the more wells being added in that area that could then be contaminated as that salt flows through that geological structure. And then the town and the DOT are on the hook for that as well. And so until we figure out sort of how we're going to deal with that salt contamination issue, that group suggested that maybe we should also have a moratorium on subdivision applications in that area. So, so that's something that you may want to consider as well.
Thanks, Anthony. Want to take these in order that we discussed, or do you want to do things sort of? I'm not sure if there's an easy answer to either one of these topics. Be quickly, but how does the board feel? You want to start off with the discussion of the moratorium on solar arrays? That discussion.
Just a process matter. Anthony, maybe you also sent us information from MMA on when it's acceptable to establish a moratorium ordinance. And so it might be good to talk about that because we obviously have to meet the requirements of state statute if we're going to move forward.
Good point.
Yeah, and George, you got that sitting in front of you. I do not right now. If memory serves me correctly, it had some specific language about.
Yeah, I can read it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So the key operative language, I mean, it's 3 pages long, so I'm not going to read 3 pages, but the key operative language reads, the principal statutory requirement for a development moratorium is that it be necessary either, number one, to prevent a shortage or overburdening of public facilities such as sewer, water, roads, schools, public safety. So that's number one. Or two, because existing plans, ordinances, or regulations, if any, are inadequate to prevent serious public harm. And I think it's worth noting further down in that same paragraph, it talks about, you know, what a court might do if somebody challenged the moratorium. And they made a comment saying, while factual justification is critical, courts will not second guess a municipality's determination of necessity. A moratorium, like any other municipal ordinance, is presumed valid, and the challenger must establish the complete absence of any facts supporting the need for a moratorium. So I take it from that courts tend to defer to the towns unless there's just a, you know, town really totally blew it.
Yes, and I think, George, that the second point that was raised in that memo, I think y'all's concern about the decommissioning of one of these facilities could potentially result in some sort of public harm. And it seems to me that, you know, that was the concern of the group, is we don't really have any hard and fast guidance in the ordinance as it regards decommissioning and potentially, you know, financial assurances that that'll be taken care of.
I mean, clearly, since the other, again, I hate to be the planning board's historian here, but the one and only other land use moratorium that town ever adopted was for subdivisions back in the late 80s. And I believe at the time there was a different statutory criterion. And my recollection, I could be very wrong, but it had to pose something akin to an emergency. And that's clearly, it's a much lower bar now.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, if you guys are interested in proposing a moratorium to the select board, you can take some measure of comfort in that other communities in Maine have had moratoriums for this very exact same sort of development. And Nick, you may be aware, but I'm unaware of any of those being successfully challenged in the courts or even challenged in the courts.
Yeah, it's been my experience that I have not heard of any of them being challenged. I actually did look up some subdivision moratorium just after your email today, and those have been challenged in the past, but that's you know, doesn't have anything to do with you know, the destruction of wells, and you know, that's a completely different. They were like rate of growth and whatnot. So I have yet to hear of anyone challenging a solar moratorium in the state.
Well, isn't a moratorium just a temporary?
That's correct. So the lifespan of that, Craig, is 180 days max, although it can be renewed for another 180 days.
Yep.
This actually comes up often. It's my understanding that there is no term limit. So you know, you can every 180 days, you know, as long as you're proving that you're working towards a solution, you know, you can keep going. But yeah, I have heard quite a few people in the past say that it can be extended one time, but I don't see anything in the statute that limits the extension to just one.
There's a note in this MMA informational packet about that speaks to that, that indicates that you have to be making reasonable progress to alleviate the problem. So in other words, you can't just pass a moratorium and then sit back on your haunches and not actually be making progress on, you know, developing an ordinance that's adequate to regulate that entity.
So if we feel that either one of these criteria have been met in Belgrade and that we would want to try to get a moratorium, we would like thinking about number 2 item here, because existing plans, ordinances, or regulations, if any, are inadequate to prevent serious public harm. That part, that by default says that we have to then start working on whatever ordinance is missing the piece that needs to address solar farms in it. Does that make sense to everybody? I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, from a workload perspective, are we in a position to do that?
Well, if memory serves me correctly, of course, you know, Peter, you and I had a discussion with Nick, and Nick thought that is something that we could turn around pretty quickly as soon as we're done with the subdivision review ordinance. Am I getting you too far over your skis there, Nick?
I don't know why this happens. Sometimes my space bar will allow me to unmute the microphone, and sometimes it won't. So, but yeah, so I do think it's certainly a realistic goal to work towards. I think depending on when we meet next and how we meet going forward with regard to the subdivision ordinance, I think it's realistic that we could get these both taken care of in 6 months.
Thanks.
So excuse me, Nick, when you say in 6 months, then you mean by the end of the year?
Yeah, give or take, roughly. I'm just thinking 180 days, from the passing of the moratorium, is why I said.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So keep in mind, fellas, that if you're going to do a moratorium, that needs to go to the voters, and that would have to happen on November 3rd. Otherwise, we might as well not even bother, because we could amend the ordinance in March at the next town meeting.
So,
Peter, that was my question. Would that then be the goal for completing, having both the subdivision ordinance and any amendments to the commercial development review ordinance that necessary to better deal with solar arrays, commercial wind power projects, and possibly telecommunication towers? Well, really, it would have to be completed, as Anthony said, the first of the year if we're going to get it to the voters in March town meeting.
That's correct, because remember, we'd have to publish it in the annual report. So, yeah, but that would have to be the goal. So, if you guys don't think you can have a moratorium done in time to put it on the November 3rd ballot, which you need at least a month lead time in order to get that printed on the ballot, we shouldn't even bother with this, and maybe just focus on getting both of those ordinances done by the end of the year in order to get those in front of the voters in March.
part of that for me, another question, if I may, part of how realistic that time frame is, I think part of that is how much would it take to develop the moratorium ordinance itself, step one of the process, basically, if we were going to go in that direction. I mean, the two examples that we've been sent are pretty distinctly different. So I don't know if there's maybe this is a question for you, Nick. Is there an off-the-shelf one that you can just slip the town of Belgrade in, and maybe a little bit of other wordsmithing and call her good?
Yeah. So I think typically sorry, I didn't mean to get so close to the camera there. Typically, a moratorium, or the whole point of a moratorium is that it's, it's a short-term, fast solution to a potentially long issue, temporary, fast solution. So they aren't meant to, what other than Palmyra, what example do you guys have?
Rangeley, which
Rangeley?
has more whereases than I've seen in most laws.
Okay, yeah. So I haven't seen Rangeley's, but when you look at Palmyra, we didn't develop that for them, but I'm sure it went through their town attorney. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to turn that around and spit it out pretty quickly. Oftentimes moratoriums are voted on in special town meetings. Just because I think that they're usually brought about by, a sharp fear of impending issues. So we can certainly, there's no question in my mind that we could get a moratorium developed by November. I was under the impression, I guess I just assumed that you guys would be presenting a moratorium at a special town meeting before that, though.
And I just don't know that I want to even go through the expense and trouble of calling a special town meeting, because, as you said, there's no sharp fear that I could detect in Belgrade about that. I mean, the butters, were not all that happy about the proposed solar farm here, but I don't know that was a widespread community sentiment. And you guys are in the community too. You may feel differently about that.
I can say from my perspective, I have not been approached by people who have said that they're very concerned about a lot more solar array developments that would be coming in, and that we have to do something, other than the abutters who had, of this last one, who had concerns. So in terms of scale, where it might be or something, I would tend to agree with you, Anthony. I don't know how widespread or how prevalent that concern is. I'm not trying to diminish anybody else's feelings about it. I'm just saying I just haven't heard it.
Pete, this is Peter Sargent. Could we discussed it a bit? Could Anthony, could you go back to the select board and kind of update them as to what our discussion has been? And maybe they have where they're elected officials, they may have some stronger, more input from the community and stronger feelings on it than we may have. I mean, as far as from an urgency perspective. So maybe they could think about it a little bit further and, based upon what the information we have. And I don't think we should make a decision right here and now.
Yeah, well, I can do that. Certainly. The select board meets on Tuesday. It's just, if it's something we're going to do, I do think the time is of the essence, because here we are in, mid to late July,
right,
and we would need to get something approved, I would say no later than September. And so, and if memory serves me correctly, the moratoriums I saw both from Rangeley and Palmyra, they were both like one-page documents, weren't they? I mean, they were pretty short. And so you know, if you guys have some,
over 2 pages.
oh, it was, okay. I didn't remember that. So, but I think simple is
Comment about all the whereases.
okay. So, you know, short and simple is good. And so you know, if we're going to do this, I would say, you know, let's not muck it up too much.
Right. George.
Since the basis for any moratorium, the legal basis would be, as Anthony put it, would be to mentioned, it would be to prevent any serious harm because our ordinances are inadequate. It would seem a little consistency would be appropriate here. I mean, I think, you know, a good argument could be made that the commercial development review ordinance has some failings or gaps with regard to solar arrays. Now that I've gotten a little smarter, I can see it's more than just the issue of decommissioning or abandonment and financial assurance. I would say my personal opinion is the same holds true for commercial wind farms. Although we have a separate section with some standards in it, there's no, for example, there's no abandonment or decommissioning or financial assurance standards in there or requirements. In fact, you could make an argument it poses a considerable liability to the financial liability to the town because it authorizes the town to abandon a commercial wind farm if they should go belly up or leave town without any finances to do that by. Telecommunications, I'm not sure. I don't know. But the other thing in terms of consistency is we clearly have concluded already that our subdivision ordinance is inadequate. It's out of date and it's inadequate. And so I would be in favor of including subdivisions in the moratorium for that reason. It's a matter of consistency. If we're going to base it on that criteria that from the MMA guidance.
So why don't I suggest this? What if I worked with Nick to come up with a proposal for a moratorium to address all the issues you just raised, George, and use that as a starting point for you guys to consider?
That would be fine with me.
I would be fine with that. Yep. Thank you. And George,
is that fine with you, Nick?
Yes.
Great.
The dang space bar, guys. Sorry.
Pete, Craig, any
Yes, that works.
I reiterate, I think I understand what you're saying. I agree with you, but I think we ought to get some more reinforced direction from the select people at this time. So that means go back to them and give them an update, and then have them revisit it and go from there.
Yeah, and sure, Pete, we can do that,
Right.
But in the meantime, hopefully, maybe we can have something ready for you guys to start hashing over as soon as the next meeting.
Okay.
So Anthony, with that in mind, does that also answer the other topic that you had brought up about the subdivision in the depot?
Yeah, I think so. I think George makes a good argument that
Same.
All of those ordinances are inadequate to address all of those sorts of developments. So we might as well, pump the brakes on all of those sort of developments until we get those ordinances ready for them.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, so I'm going to go dark here because I told Mr. Bagwell I'd give him a call when he was on deck there. So give me just a few minutes here while I give him a call.
Before I start, when is the next meeting? Is it going to be in 2 weeks?
It would be the first Thursday in August. So,
Which I think is the 6th, Nick.
yeah. Yep.
Peter,
George?
do you want to do the
Yeah.
minutes while we're waiting?
Stand by. Maybe. Does everybody have the minutes that were sent out? I think Nick sent them, right?
Anthony did.
Oh, Anthony did. Okay. Oh, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to log off. I'll see you on August, the first Thursday of August.
Thank you, Nick.
And
Really appreciate
please,
it.
if anything comes up, if anything is on your mind, just shoot me an email or give me a call, whatever, between now and then, if you so need.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Got it.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
So, George, great idea about doing the minutes. Does everybody have the minutes from July 2nd that Anthony sent out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do them.
I've actually already looked them over once, and Anthony's already incorporated my suggested changes, so I'm good with them as is.
Craig, George. So, from a logistics point of view, according to the minutes from July 2nd, Pete Sargent was not there, right? So he would not vote on these minutes.
Right.
Rich is not here. Vote on them. Roger is not here. So we'd have the quorum of Peter, George, and Craig vote on these, right? Okay. Oh.
Hello?
I'm all set. I don't have anything.
Hi, I'm Bruce Bagwell.
Mr. Bagwell.
How you doing?
1 minute.
Yeah, Mr. Bagwell, just give them just 1 minute. They're approving.
No,
the
not a
minutes
problem.
here, and then they're
Just
going to be
checking
right
the
here.
audio. Yep.
You're good. Craig and George, I don't have any other edits for those minutes. Well done.
Can't.
Guess I'd make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
So a motion on the floor to approve as submitted and seconded. Any more discussion? So all those in favor, we'll do a roll call. All those in favor, George?
Yes.
Yes. Craig?
Yes.
And Peter Rushton says yes. The minutes were approved. Thank you. And if we could, Mr. Bagwell, thank you for your time tonight. We did receive your application and a letter that you sent out to us.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And here's your application. So you're looking for what was approved back in 2015 to be reapproved at this time.
Yeah.
That is solely it, right there.
Do you want me to give you a little background, or shall we just go forward? Or
Certainly, sir. Go ahead. Please do.
so in 1999, my wife and I bought the cottage, and from 2000 on, we rented it to people that wanted to spend the summer there on the lake. By the time 2014 rolled around, the cottage, it wasn't really built very well. And so we started to entertain the idea of rebuilding it so that we could continue with the summer rentals. And I had a friend of ours, friend of mine, his son was a contractor, Sean Labita. And we interacted, we found plans that would work in that space. And in 2015, we went to this board with an application to essentially remove the existing building and put a new one there in its stead that would be built better. And, it was really a beautiful building. And then life happened, which hopefully you're smiling at that. Yeah, so our younger daughter decided to get married and wanted a big wedding. And then, but the real issue that happened was that Sean had a rather major medical condition that precluded him from being our contractor. And at exactly the same time, my company was building this medical application that had me traveling across the United States. And that took years to finally complete. And in the last year, we finally got this medical device out the door, which now is being used extensively for COVID-19 research. And just as an aside, my wife is in charge of the main medical center, pediatric ICU. So our lives really have been totally about work and not much time for breathing. And so after the company released this project, I looked at things, and my father died when he was 70, and my birthday was going to be 71. So I decided to retire at that point. And anybody that knew me was incredibly surprised because, I'd always said that the only time I would retire is when I would sit at the lunch table and have no idea what anybody was talking about. So, but anyway, so I retired. My wife is soon to retire. And so at this point, we're consolidating, simplifying our lives, getting ready for retirement. And so I understand that this is coming. We've lost our building permit at this point. I completely understand that. So what we're trying to do is resubmit this permit with the idea that if we can have the building as it was originally designed, it becomes something that some other people that maybe a young couple can purchase it and build a house there and so on. If I can't, with the current setbacks, it ends up that the building that we could put there, it would be 15 feet wide. So that's like a trailer. And so that's sort of the backstory. When we sat down and we were rewriting up the application, we decided to just try to rewrite it the same way as it was originally written, and then go before you all and see whether we could have a building permit. The house, the issue at hand is that I had gotten to the point of removal of the house, and then life happened, and we weren't able to build at that point. So that's sort of the backstory. And I know you all have been at this meeting for way too long, so I won't say anything more unless you have questions for me.
Thank you very much for that recap. I appreciate that. And, let's see now. So I'm scrolling through the application and I'm looking at what was submitted. And if I'm understanding this correctly, I'm seeing on whatever page this is, it would be, I don't know, page 9, I think, out of 12, that there's a drawing and it shows the lot and it shows in a dashed line what I think is the proposed new construct, which would be 75 feet from the high water mark of Great Pond. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, so we decide, well, I think at that point in time, it was a 75-foot setback, and you must have extended it to 100 feet. And so that extension of 100 feet actually makes it so that you can't really put a building there. It would only be 15 feet wide. And the part of the issue is that the survey was off by 10 or 15 feet when you actually measured it from the water to the road. So that's the dilemma. And we also, if I just say, we had a septic plan. So we own the lot on the other side of the road. And part of this would be to put in a nice septic plan in that lot, which we had designed back there in 2015, and Philbrook is in the process of redesigning it for 2020. So that would be the idea. Is it would put in, and I should state, as I said in the letter, we've been paying taxes as if the building were there, and the idea behind that is, rather than, trying to make it so that, we paid less taxes and then come back and put a building there, it just didn't make sense. So we've been wanting to put a building there and have been paying taxes as if the building were still there. So that's the issue at hand.
Okay.
Peter, if I may
George.
ask a question of Mr. Bagwell, just to be clear, so the prior camp, or the camp that existed in 2015, has been demolished?
Yeah, so that it was getting to the point where I felt it dangerous for it to remain. It literally was starting to sag here and there. And so I had there's still the footers that are still there, but the structure itself was demolished, and the idea was then we would build the house in that dotted confined area.
Thank you.
So this is just to be clear for everybody, so this is a non-conforming, right? How wide is that lot? It's pretty narrow, it seems like.
I think it's 100 feet wide, isn't it?
Yeah, somebody said it was a double. I don't know what that means, but 98 feet. Is that the right
It's about
number?
100 feet, it's about 100 feet wide, roughly, just a little bit under. I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And it goes back, what, about 240, 250, someplace around there?
Well, the lot on the lakeside, according to the survey, assuming we have the correct drawing, is 88.12 feet wide.
Okay.
And 108
Yes. Right.
feet long.
Yeah.
And they're
Okay. So I guess that still means that this is a non-conforming lot, right?
right.
And
And it would be a non-conforming structure.
so a non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot.
That
And
doesn't sound good.
oh, there are provisions for that sort of thing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's not the end of the game just yet.
Okay.
So that brings us to page 9, I would say, on our ordinance. Under section 12, nonconformance, C, nonconforming structures. So we're looking at a proposed structure that is in the dashed line on dashed lines represent the outline of it on page 9 of your application. That is proposed to be 1,250 square feet. Is that correct? No, 1,091 square feet. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the idea was that at the time we could only go, if I recall correctly, 30% greater. It was something like that. So we tried to make it so that it would just fit within that constraint.
Peter, I have another question for Mr. Bagwell, if I may.
Sure.
On your application on the front page where Peter was just reading the 1,091 square foot for the proposed structure, and I'm guessing I know what happened, but that square footage doesn't agree with what is shown on the drawing, which is on page 4, which those dimensions would give you a building of 1,286 square feet for a footprint.
I think we included the sun deck, or there were a couple additions.
Yeah, that would include the sun deck. So that would include the sun deck, the covered entry, which counts towards your footprint.
Yeah.
As well as the camp itself, the camp proper.
Yeah, so it's got total building area 1,500 square feet. Finished area 1,345. I mean, that's okay. Yeah.
No, isn't the footprint 1,091? And then whatever the covered entry is?
Yeah, well,
Repeat that for me, Craig.
The footprint of the camp and the sun deck is 1,091 plus whatever the entryway would be. It's 36 by 30. Right? Is that, am I seeing it right? 36 by 30, 900 and
That's 1,080.
I have 30 by 46, but for the main structure.
Well, yeah, we're parceling it out though. What Craig's trying to do is it's 30 by 36 for the main camp according to the drawing on page 4.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
And then 8 by 19 for the sun deck, and then I estimated based on I didn't know what scale this was, but I estimated that it was at a 1 inch equals 7.6 feet. scale, and that comes to 54 square feet footprint for the covered entry, unless I did my math entirely wrong.
Well, we did actually sit down and work it all out, and it finally made sense to us, but okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same numbers.
Okay.
Sure. So George,
1235 plus the entry. Right.
Yeah, so, and I put the entry at 54 square feet. It's an estimate because I don't know what the scale of that drawing is. And so I was taking it, I developed my own scale based on what the, what the length of in inches to 36 feet.
So what you said, 54?
Yeah.
That equals 1,289 square feet. Total.
Question from Peter Sargent. There's a little outbuilding over there that was still there.
Yes, it is. There's like a little shack there that has.
Is that included in the 1,289?
No.
No.
I don't believe so.
And that's still existing.
Yes.
That still exists. Yeah, that was.
That's all was left on the lot.
That's all that's left, right?
okay. So I was just looking at the calculations that we have, and based on our ordinance, for if the front part of the deck is at 75 feet from the normal high water, that means the rest of the structure, proposed structure, is greater than 75 feet. So for what part of that is under 100 feet from from the normal high water mark must not be greater than 1,500 square feet. Are the board members with me on this?
Right.
And Mr. Bagwell, do you understand what I'm saying?
Rephrase that if you might.
I'll do my darndest. So, so the way the ordinance reads is that anything that's within 100 feet from the water can't exceed a certain amount of square feet.
Okay.
1,500 in this case. For your proposed structure, the front of it is at 75 feet. So if you go, the way I'm reading it is, if the front of it is at 75 feet from the water, go back 25 more feet, which is, I don't know, it's like 3/4 of your proposed structure. That much of your structure cannot exceed 1,500 square feet.
Okay.
So the way it's being proposed is, I'm not seeing a problem with what you're proposing from a square footage perspective.
Okay.
You exceed that 1,500 feet within 100 feet from the water.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense?
Sort of.
Yeah, I know. I know. If you don't do it every day, and we don't, every other week, when it's okay.
Yeah, right. Every other.
And planning board members, jump in if I'm not being clear, please, because I'm just trying to make sure we're all on the same page. What about?
So Peter, I'm a little confused myself. Between 75 feet and 100 feet, what's the square footage he has in there?
It's, I don't know, but it's well under 1,500 square feet. It would be, it's under
the total
under 12.
Okay, so the building is total 1,289. Now, part of that building is in the 75 to 0.
No.
No.
It's all within 75 to to 100. There's no problem. It's all.
That's exactly,
Okay.
that's exactly what I was telling him.
Good. Let's move on.
Okay.
It's simple.
We just did.
Good.
We're good.
Okay.
Are we hitting a 20% rule anywhere? Planning board members?
Well, that leads me to another question, Peter, about the application. So just so we're keeping track, you know, we have some, we have an error in the application that would need to be corrected before we, you know, eventually, before we vote on this. But again, a question for you, Mr. Bagwell, if I may. Under number 8 of your application, the front page, the square footage of unvegetated surface within the shoreland zone, which is that entire lot, you have 1,250 square feet. I just happened to take a look at. I'm not familiar with the area down there, but I haven't been down there in years. But I did take a look at your property on Google Earth, and it must have been an older image because it still showed the old camp there. But is that 1,250 square feet include like the driveway and the various walkways and the parking area, or is that just the building? My point being that the ordinance requires that to include all those unvegetated areas as well as any structure.
I'm not going to be able to answer you. I just don't remember how that was figured out, and obviously I could find out, but.
George?
Yeah,
George? I went down there last week just to have a look.
mm-hmm.
There actually isn't a gravel driveway. It's entirely grass.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay.
Yes, it's grass. You drive on the lawn.
Okay, because it didn't look that way from the satellite.
Well, I think it's grown to grass from lack of use.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right. And this is only relevant, it's relevant to Peter's question of whether 20%.
Right.
So if the lot is 22,064 square feet, 20% is, if I did my math right, 4,412. Anybody do that right?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So there
Plus a little.
Shouldn't be an issue.
So it should not be an issue. Yeah. So we're not hitting the 20% rule. We've tried to address the numbers that we're trying to report on the application as being accurate for number 8. That, Georgia, is a good point. And we would need to have a correction on the proposed structure square footage value. That's another thing. And Mr. Bagwell, I know that for anybody that would have an application that's proposing to build in the shoreland zone, which this would be, that we would want to have a certified contractor number on the application as well.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure you are aware of that, of that fact, because I'm sure we'll be talking about that in a minute. But, what other questions do we have about this particular application?
Peter, I have another question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Mr. Bagwell, what will be the setback from the Pinkham Cove Road? I assume, is that, well, let me ask 2 questions. The first question maybe is for Gary. Is the Pinkham Cove Road a town road or is it a private road?
It's a private road, and if I recall, the setback shows 25 feet from the right-of-way. Or that's what I was told, anyway. I thought it said plan.
Yeah, I can't tell from the plan.
Okay.
It looks like that might be about right.
I think it was, yeah.
Because we talk about that in our ordinance, right?
We do on page 33.
33.
I may have read that in the minutes of the 2015 meeting. Maybe that's where I saw it.
Yeah, I had to estimate it based on,
Yeah.
because I got a photocopy and
Yeah.
I estimated it to be 28 feet.
Yeah, I thought it was in excess of 25.
So, Mr. Bagwell, what we're talking about is that in our ordinance that we would say that a structure would not be any closer than 25 feet to the near edge of a private road.
Right.
So it would appear as though if we're understanding the plan correctly, that you'd be fine as proposed. But we just have clarity on that. That's why we're asking.
Yeah. I just didn't know if that was a public or private road, and since it's called road rather than lane, it obviously doesn't conform with, the emergency 911 procedures. But
yeah, it's definitely private.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so the setback from the road, from the right of way, I should say, near edge of a private road, that was okay. We've talked about the square footage allowed within 100 feet of the normal high water mark. That's okay. We're not exceeding the 20% rule on the lot. That would be okay. We talked about two things on the application that need to be edited. One is the proper value for the proposed structure square footage. So in other words, the 1,091 is not in sync with what when we did our calculations all together, right? And we are missing a certified contractor number on the application.
Hey, Peter?
Yes, sir.
I don't believe he can supply you with a certified contractor number. I believe it's his intent to market this property. So whoever buys it will have to provide that at a later date.
Oh, okay.
That's correct.
Because as you market it, it would be to sell that it's ready approved to build this structure.
That's correct.
You just at a critical moment, I can't hear you.
Hey, you're back.
Sorry, you blanked out there. Yeah.
So I was saying the intent is to market the property ready-made, ready approved to build this structure.
Correct. That's the idea.
Okay. So planning board members, do we have other questions?
Yes, I got a question, Peter.
Go ahead.
What's the height of the building going to be?
I'm sure it's underneath whatever you had. I can't tell you that right now, but I certainly find out. What is the maximum height it can be? Maybe
34 feet.
Okay.
Actually, it's 25.
Yeah, 25.
100 feet.
All right. All right. Good. And then the septic system is going to go on the other side of the lane there.
Yes.
All right. And how much how much of that land is going to be filled in? Or can it be? What's the story on that?
Isn't that part of the submission is the specifics on the plan. And that, by the way, is something that is being redone.
Oh, regarding the septic system, you mean?
Yes. So we asked them to redo the plan with 2020, in mind, and so I think he's going to do that for us.
Okay.
Peter,
Yes,
Peter?
Gary, go ahead.
that piece of land that you're referring to, that's across the street, is completely flat. So there'll be very little fill. And it's probably gonna be like 150 feet from the lake.
Okay, I'm kind of curious. Does the well guy, not the well guy, but the
septic guy?
The septic guy, does he have to go in front of DEP at all to get?
No.
At all to bring fill in? You can just do it.
No. As a matter of fact, I'm sure that the septic guy probably won't even go down there. He'll just redate the application so it's not over 2 years old. If nothing's changed, typically that's what they do.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. If that land wanted to be filled in, could he fill it in?
It's basically a lawn right now.
On the back lot, where the woods are.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of woods on it.
On the other side of the road, from.
That's septic's going. It's flat. It's a flat lot.
Okay. The septic is going where? On the front lot? Or on
no, across the road where you're talking about.
Yeah, that's all tree. It's all tree.
I know, but it's flat, so it's not going to require a lot of fill to put a septic system in.
It's not wet back there at all. It's not.
If he provided you with the septic application, there's an elevation on it. If you flip the page of that, it'll show you what it's got, the profile.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, George.
A question for you, Gary. You haven't approved the septic system for this new building, have you?
I approved it back in 2015. Yes.
And does that approval apply today?
I would reapprove it as soon as the site evaluator puts a new date on it that doesn't exceed 2 years.
I mean, yeah, I didn't know if it expired, is what I'm asking.
It has expired.
Okay, so currently they have no permit, a septic permit.
That's correct.
So that's an impediment.
Well, there again.
One to, as part, or your say so that there is one today, if we're going to approve it today.
I haven't issued one, but I issued one in 2015. I will have to reissue it.
Right.
The issue here is they're marketing the property. So I assume they want the new owner to bring me the new design for a permit versus them paying the fee for a permit. I don't know. He can answer that for you.
Yeah, I'm just going by what's in the ordinance in terms of
I know
what the requirements are for us to be able to approve.
I know. No, they don't have a current permit in hand.
So, George, do you want to let Mr. Bagwell know what you're thinking about, if you don't mind?
No, Mr. Bagwell, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so there's a provision in the ordinance that we cannot issue a permit unless there's an accompanying effective permit for the
right when I needed you, you're not coming through.
Can you hear me now?
I can. It's just going in and out.
I promise this isn't a cell phone commercial.
Okay.
All right, let me try again. So the reason for my line of questioning of Gary as our local plumbing inspector was that the permit that he issues, we have to have in hand at the time that we issue a shoreland zoning permit. Your permit from 2015 has expired. There's no new permit. That would delay us from being able to approve a shoreland zoning permit until such time as Gary receives and approves the wastewater permit.
Okay, fair enough.
Peter, one other question, and I don't believe I have one, but I wanted to ask: is there a profile drawing of this building as required by the ordinance, which would show the total height and other features?
I don't have that either in my package.
I'm sure it was submitted with all the plans.
I just have a top view. That's all I have, but not a profile view.
Same.
George, I think that's all that was provided.
That's all we provided you, but is there
You may have
not a file or
Yeah,
there?
it may be in the 215 file, but I don't have a current one.
Okay.
Okay.
So a profile of the proposed structure is needed. At this point, how does the board wish to proceed with this application that's in front of us?
I had a question on the profile of the building. What are we talking about on a profile? What's a profile?
You know, side on, Pete.
Pardon? Oh, side view. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because we got the bird's eye view, which is awesome. But
Right. I just want to clarify that so the owner, the applicant, understands that.
No, I understand it completely, and I'm positive that all that stuff is in a file there at the town office.
Okay.
Peter, if I could ask yet another question.
Sure.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to wrap my head around the timing here because this is a little unusual for us to be approving something sort of speculative, if you will, for marketing purposes rather than for immediate construction purposes. What's your sense? What is the timing for redesigning the septic system, getting that to Gary for approval?
Yeah, to me, so I actually just asked that question a little while ago, and that could be very quick. I mean, you know, that could be within days to have that done for you. If I could just, so it's a complicated issue. I think what I'm really after from you all is whether we can, with all the additions and so on, whether you feel that it can be built on. If it can't be built on, then you know, my guess is it's just going to end up being land, and so it's to me that's the issue. I wanted to go through with the permit process since that sort of forces the issue at hand, and you know it's something very tangible. But the main thing is if we provide all the things that you need, is it something that you all would approve? And if I knew that, then you know that's really what I'm after, because I don't want to sell the land with a promise that you can build when you really can't. So that's the That's the issue.
Well, speaking for myself, I can't speak for the whole board, but from what I've seen so far, you know, with the caveat that you mentioned, that if the additional information we need to have a complete application, and you know, approval of the septic system by Gary, it appears to me that a building of the size and
Sorry, you just faded out again.
All right, can you hear me now?
I can now. Yeah, it's just in and out. What?
I don't know. Doesn't like me. So what I was just speaking for myself, but you know, with the caveat that you mentioned, if we were provided all the information we needed for a complete application, like the profile drawing and you know, the certified contractor number and all that, plus you know, you got the septic system approval from
Yep.
Gary. It appears to me that this is an approvable building of that dimension in that specific location.
Oh, that, you know, to me, that's really what I was hoping for. And I would definitely just move forward and get it all done. And do you meet like every month, or what's the, how often do you?
August
meet?
6th.
Every month or every other month?
August 6th is our next meeting.
August 6th. So what I could do in the meantime.
They meet twice a month.
Oh.
Twice a month, every other week.
Okay, every other week. Okay. I can get everything together, and it certainly would. I can get everything together and maybe try again with you all, having all the calculations so that I understand them, and all the necessary profiles, and redo number 8. I'm not sure why the square footage didn't add up, since we were able to do that a couple weeks ago. So I'll have to look at that.
And the certified contractor number, we can probably handle that by a condition that be provided before production.
Right.
Right. I mean, obviously the contractor number is not something I'm not planning on starting the building myself. So that would be contingent on somebody purchasing the property, and then, you know, with the proviso that they could build with all the specifications that we currently have.
Question for you, Gary, if I may. Let's, you know, we issue the permit to we issue the permit to Mr. Bagwell. He sells the property in the next, you know, couple of months or whatever, and somebody else buys it, and we have some conditions on the permit, like, as Craig suggested, the DEP certified excavation contractor name and number, and we'll probably have a condition dealing with stormwater runoff from the roof and other unvegetated areas, or impervious areas, I should say. I assume those would apply to the new owner, or would would the new owner have to have the permit transferred into their name?
No, it would apply, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, it would.
Thank you.
That's good to have that answered, because to the best of my knowledge, I have not been involved in an action like this one. This is an unusual one.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's okay.
We like something different.
Yeah. So it sounds like you still have some information to get.
Yeah, I do. And the question I have for you all is, if in fact it is a lot that can be built upon within a certain set of conditions that we can, within a certain set of conditions, is that something that you all could write a letter to that effect? So it's not just a verbal understanding.
Well, you have the permit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I prefer to just do the permit, and then that's as solid as it gets. But
that would be my take on it, is that the permit would be in hand.
Okay.
That's, I would say. And I didn't get a chance to answer yet, but I agreed with what George said, that I see nothing to prevent providing the information's given to us to allow us to go forward and approve the application under these exact conditions that have been permitted. So it would be a buildable place, as described.
Is Gary still online?
I am, yes.
Gary, is this something you could help us with? So as we get this information, you can, tell us, okay, you need this more. And,
They're gonna
so that we don't waste anybody's time.
They're gonna tell you exactly what they need if they haven't already. And you're gonna send that to me, and I'll verify that you've met what they asked for. And then I'll submit it back to the planning board.
Is that something I can get in writing as to exactly what I need, so I can just start checking it?
I don't know if the board's going to give you that in writing or not. I mean, there wasn't a lot. There was a contractor certification number. There was a septic permit that was updated and approved by me. What else was there, George?
A correction to the
square footage.
Right, and a profile drawing of the building showing its total height, among other things.
I don't believe you need that in writing. There's 4 things.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm writing here, and I've got down to 4, so I need so I need a correction to the square footage.
Right.
A profile of the building demonstrating that it's not going to be over 25 feet.
Correct.
An approved septic system.
Correct.
What was the 4th one?
Well, we talked about contractor certification, but as Craig stated before, I think they can put a condition on the permit that says that the new owner shall provide that before start of construction.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would go so far as to say the owner, before start of construction, the owner would provide it, because that's what we care about.
Yeah.
Okay. So board members, I'd like to find out, we know that the applicant needs to get more information. Do you think that tabling this until such time that the information is provided is probably the direction we'd like to go?
Yes, Peter speaking, Sergeant.
Thank you, Peter Sargent. At this point, I would entertain a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to table the application pending complete application.
Motion on the floor.
Second.
And seconded. Thank you. Any more discussion on this? Mr. Bagwell, you understand what we're looking for, is that correct?
I do. Thank you very much for your time. I know you've been going at this for quite some time, so thank you for taking a little bit more.
You're very welcome.
Get paid the big bucks.
Do we have any more questions for Mr. Bagwell at this time?
No.
Hearing no other questions, I would do a roll call vote. So all those in favor to table the application until such time it's completed. George, you're the first in I can see. Yes. Craig?
Yes.
Pete Sargent?
Yay.
And Peter Rushton says yay. So all in favor, all 4 in favor, none opposed. So this is tabled. So we'll look forward to hearing from you again, Mr. Bagwell.
Okay.
And we'll see you at a later date.
Can't wait.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, and have a very good night.
You too. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So for planning board members, I think that about wraps it up for tonight. I think from what we had, we've covered a lot of ground. I do have one thing I want to make blatantly clear, if it's okay with everybody now, unless there's another thing to talk about. Okay. So you may have noticed Roger DeRozier is not with us at this time. He submitted his resignation from the planning board due to health reasons. So he did speak to Anthony, and then Anthony called me. And maybe some of you have seen Roger around town. I don't know, but I just wanted you to know he's calling it. Poor guy, I guess, had a. I might not say this correctly, and I don't want to convey the wrong message, but I want to say like a mini stroke of some sort. I'm not sure what that entailed or anything, but apparently that made him really reconsider, his own medical experience and what he has to do in the upcoming near future. So he spoke to Anthony about that, and but I wanted to share that with you guys. So just so you know. So
Thanks for sharing that, Pete.
yeah, of course, yes, I'd be happy to. So I would like to reach out to Roger, at least through email, or stop by his house if he'd allow visitors or whatever. I normally wouldn't just pop in unannounced, but he's driving and all that, so I think he just needs to take a breather on some stuff. So, but he's contributed a lot over the years, so I really appreciate what he has done.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
And he's his cancer surgery, was that successful as far as you know?
I thought that it was from what I understood. And I'm not sure what caused the mini stroke or whatever. And I think the way he told Anthony about it, who then told me about this mini stroke or whatever it was, I think the term was the medical community felt that he'd be susceptible to having more of these. I'm not sure what would cause it, if it's hypertension or something else, I don't know, but something. And that was part of his decision-making process, was how he's going to handle, the short-term and mid-term future for him. So
That was the case in my mother. She had a series of those, and it was caused by hypertension.
it was, okay. So, that's what little I know at this point. Moving from that topic, are there any updates about town stuff? Gary, do you have anything for us?
The only thing I will mention is I've been in contact with an engineer who's working for Pete Gagney. And they are putting a plan together that you will see eventually to build a new precast building on their property.
Okay.
Which will include a new approximately 2-acre parking lot that goes with it.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so I don't know when you'll see that application, but I have spoke to the engineer and he's working on it.
Okay.
Gary, who are they using for an engineer?
What's that?
What engineering firm are they using?
I don't remember, George. It was nobody that I recognized or had ever talked to before.
Oh, okay, just curious.
Well, his only question to me was what the permit fee would be to go to the planning board.
Okay.
So it was really technical.
Yeah, it was high tech. Yeah.
The important stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Anything else anybody wants to talk about?
Just getting back to Roger, if I may, there was some email traffic about possibly getting him like a gift certificate or to a restaurant or some other recognition of his many years of service, which I think would be very appropriate. And
Yep.
I'd be
I'm in.
going to contribute to.
So is Anthony circulating that or
I don't know.
yeah? Okay, all right. I'll find out. I'll find out about that, and we'll see. And
Hey, Peter, I got a question.
yes, sir.
Town business. Who got elected as select person this time?
That's a good question. Craig, did you have something?
Dan Newman won.
Okay, thank you.
By 6 votes.
Boy, that was close, huh? Jeez. Was there a recount?
There was actually, and it came out exactly the same.
Good. I'm glad.
Yep. I think the town is happy that the vote's behind them.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of mail-in votes, right, Gary?
We have an honest system here in this town.
There was a record number.
Really? Oh my goodness.
What'd they say? Was it a total of 900 some odd votes cast and 700
Right around,
were the mail-in type?
yeah, right in that area. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I don't have the numbers exactly, but it's in that ballpark. So
Well, 900 mail-ins, you say?
No.
900 total, 900 and
900 total.
change.
Okay. Yeah. How many mail-ins?
Is Anthony still with us?
It looks as though he's here, but he may not be here. I don't know.
Anthony mentioned earlier
Okay.
was 700 mail-in.
How much?
Mail-ins.
700.
Yeah, he just 7 something. Yeah.
Wow.
We must have lost Anthony.
Yep.
That's my only
No.
question. All right. Thank you.
Sure, Pete. All right. Anything else for tonight? I guess we should wrap it up. And last time we had a motion to close the meeting. I would entertain another one.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Thank you. And seconded. No more discussion. All those in favor, roll call. George?
Yes.
Yes. Craig?
Yes.
Pete Sargent?
Yes.
Pete Rushton? Yes. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Enjoy your suppers.
How do we turn this thing off?
With your cursor, go to the lower right. You'll see a leave button.
Okay.
See it?
Yeah, I see
Yes.
it.
And click that.
Okay.
And then you have another thing that says leave.
Okay. Thank you.